The choice the days after her confession passed with heavy silence. The girl worked with the human as before, carrying water, gathering wood, repairing fences, yet inside her heart, fear grew. She had told him everything, her shame, her failure, her rejection, and still he stayed. But for how long? One morning, the sound of hooves broke the peace of the village. Dust rose in the distance. A group of riders appeared, armored and proud. Their banners bore the mark of her people. The villagers gathered quickly, whispering, pointing. "They've come for her," someone said. "They want the giant back," another muttered. Children clung to their mothers. Men stepped aside nervously. None dared stand close. The girl froze, her chest tightening, her body trembled as memories returned. She recognized the crest, the armor, the cruel faces. These were officials from her world, the same kind who had declared her worthless, the same kind who had sold her. The leader of the riders dismounted. His eyes scanned the village. Before landing on her massive form, he sneered. "There she is, the failed one." His voice carried across the crowd. "Sharp and cruel, by order of the clan, she must return with us. She is property, not a person." Her knees weakened, her heart pounded painfully. She wanted to run, but her legs refused. She wanted to speak, but her throat closed tight. All the shame, all the chains returned in one crushing moment. The human stepped forward, his body blocking her from the riders, his voice calm but firm. "She is not property," he said. "She is not yours to take." The villagers gasped. Some pulled back, whispering, "The human is mad. He'll be killed." The riders laughed. Their leader sneering, "You think you can claim her, human? You think a weak creature like you can stand against us?" The human's eyes did not waver. "Yes," he said simply. The girl's breath caught, her heart thundered. No one had ever spoken for her. No one had ever defied her people on her behalf. Yet here was one man, one human, standing like a wall between her and the past that wanted to drag her back. The leader raised his hand, signaling his men to move. The villagers whispered in fear. "There will be blood. The human will die for her." The girl's whole body shook. She could not let him fight alone. Not for her. Not for someone like her. Summoning her courage, she stepped forward. Her voice cracked but carried strength. "I am not meat," she shouted. Her words silenced the crowd. Her massive form trembled. But she lifted her head high. "I will not return to chains. I will not be cut apart. I am more than what you say." The leader sneered. "You are nothing." But the human's voice cut through like iron. "She belongs to no one but herself." He looked at her then, his eyes steady. "Unless she chooses," her heart raced. The meaning struck her deeply. This was not about ownership, not about chains. This was about choice. For the first time in her life, someone gave her the power to decide. The riders shifted uneasily. The girl stood taller, her voice stronger. "Then I choose," she said. Her chest rose and fell as she turned toward the human. "I choose to stay with him." Gasps filled the air. The villagers stared. The riders clenched their fists, but none moved. Her words rang clear. Powerful, unstoppable. The leader spat on the ground, rage burning in his eyes. "This is not over," he growled, mounting his horse. The riders turned and rode away, leaving only dust behind. The girl's legs shook, but she did not fall. She looked at the human, her eyes wet with tears, her voice soft but firm. "I chose. I am his." The human placed a hand on her arm, steady and warm. His eyes carried no pride, only respect. "Then no one will take you," he said, in that moment. Her chains shattered completely, not by force, not by fear, but by choice. The claim of a new life. The dust from the riders slowly faded into the horizon. The village was silent. Everyone had seen what happened. Everyone had heard her voice. The girl stood tall in the open street, her chest heaving, her hands trembling. She had chosen, and the world had witnessed it. The villagers whispered among themselves. She spoke for herself. One muttered, she defied her own people. Another said, children peeked from behind doorways, staring wide-eyed. No one threw stones now, no one laughed. The girl turned to the human, her eyes wet but steady. I am yours, she whispered, her voice soft but filled with strength. Not as property, but by choice. The human's face remained calm, yet in his eyes there was something rare respect. He touched her arm lightly. Then we walk forward together, he said. His words carried weight, simple yet unshakable. She felt her heart surge at those words. For the first time, she was not being led by chains or shame. She was walking beside someone who saw her, truly saw her, that night. The village gathered. Some curious, some afraid, some quietly admiring. The human stood outside his small house with the alien girl beside him, her massive form lit by the fire's glow. The whispers grew softer as the villagers remembered the night of the bandit attack, remembered how she had fought to protect them. An old woman from the crowd stepped forward, her voice cracked with age but strong with truth. She saved us, she said. We cannot deny that. Others nodded slowly, some still frowned, but no one spoke against it. The girl lowered her head, unused to such words, unused to even a hint of acknowledgement, but the human placed his hand on her shoulder. Steadying her, she lifted her gaze, her back straightening. Later, beside the quiet of the house, she sat by the fire. The flames danced in her eyes as she whispered, all my life, I believed I was nothing. I believed I had no worth. But today, when I spoke, when I chose, I felt alive. The human nodded, his voice calm. Because you claimed yourself, he said. No one else can take that away now. Her throat tightened. She looked at him, her voice trembling. Do you think I can truly live here, among humans? He met her gaze without hesitation. Yes, he said. If you walk with me, you can. Tears slid down her cheeks. Not of sorrow this time, but of release. She covered her face with her hands, her body shaking. I never thought I would have this chance, she whispered. Not after everything. He reached across the fire and gently lowered her hands, his eyes steady. You are not meat. You are not a curse. You are not worthless, he said. His words cut deep into her heart, burning away the shadows. In that moment, she leaned forward, resting her head against his shoulder, her massive form trembling like a child's. He did not push her away. He simply sat still, letting her cry, letting her be. The fire crackled, the night deepened, and the silence between them was no longer heavy. It was warm. By dawn, when the first light touched the sky, the girl stepped outside. The village was quiet, but she felt different now. She was no longer the chained girl of the market, no longer the failure cast out by her people. She was someone who had chosen her own path. The human joined her, standing at her side, together. They looked at the road stretching into the hills, endless and free. Her voice was steady, carrying across the morning air. This is my life now, my choice, my new beginning. The human nodded. Then let us begin, he said. And with that, they walked forward. Not as master and slave, not as rescuer and burden, but as companions, bound not by chains, but by choice. The market of shame was behind her. The world ahead was uncertain. But for the first time in her life, she faced it without fear. For she was no longer meat, no longer worthless. She was free, and she was his. The bond grows. The night after the bandit attack was silent. The fire inside the human's small house burned low, casting a soft glow across the room. The girl sat on the floor with her arm wrapped in cloth, her wound still stinging. The human knelt beside her, carefully cleaning the cut with steady hands. She flinched at the touch, not from pain, but from surprise. No one had ever cared if she bled. No one had ever bothered to heal her. They had always left her to suffer, after all. She was only meat, only waste, yet here was a human, patient, gentle, treating her as if she mattered. "You should rest," he said, tying the cloth tighter. His voice was calm, firm. She looked at him, eyes wide. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care if I live or die?" He paused for a moment, meeting her gaze. "Because you are alive," he said. "That is enough reason." Her chest ached. She lowered her head, hiding her face. Tears stung her eyes, but she did not want him to see. She had been called useless for so long that hearing those words felt like fire inside her heart. The next morning, the village was alive with whispers. The people had seen her strength. They had seen her fight off the bandits when no one else dared. Some still mocked, some still feared, but others were silent now, watching from a distance. When she walked beside the human, no stones were thrown. The children did not dare run close. The men no longer shouted insults. Instead, they stepped aside quickly, afraid of what she might do. The girl noticed the change. Her hands shook. She had always wanted to be accepted, but this was not acceptance. This was fear. Still, it was better than laughter, better than chains. One evening, as they sat outside the house, the human gave her bread and dried meat. She hesitated before asking, her voice soft. "Do you fear me too?" He looked at her, his eyes calm. "No," he said simply. "You saved me. Why would I fear you?" Her heart pounded at his words. She gripped the food tightly, not knowing how to answer. Slowly, she nodded. "No one has ever thanked me before," she whispered. The human leaned back, staring at the stars. Then they were blind. He replied, her breath caught. She looked up at the night sky too. The stars seemed brighter than before. Her chest felt lighter, as if something heavy was slowly lifting. Days turned into weeks. The wound on her arm healed, and the silence between them became comfortable. She began to help him with small tasks, carrying wood, fetching water, fixing broken tools. Her massive form that had once been called useless now gave her strength. She could do work that 3 men together could not. The human never treated her as a servant. He only smiled when she helped and said, "Thank you," each time. Those 2 words became precious to her. One night, as the fire crackled, she asked again, "Why did you really buy me? You could have left me there." The human's face grew serious. He looked into the flames for a long moment before answering, "Because I could not watch them destroy you." Her heart trembled. His words were simple, yet they carried weight. No one had ever chosen her before. Not for kindness, not for care, only for cruelty. But this man had, and she did not understand why. She whispered softly, almost afraid to speak, "You see me as more than meat." He turned his head and looked directly into her eyes. "I see you," he said. The firelight danced between them, and in that quiet moment, something shifted deep inside her. The bond between them grew stronger, fragile, yet unbreakable. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe she was not worthless. Maybe she was not alone. The dark past revealed the days grew calmer after the bandit attack. The girl worked beside the human, carrying heavy loads, mending broken fences, and gathering wood. The villagers still whispered, but fewer dared to insult her. They had seen her strength, and though they did not accept her, they now feared the cost of mocking her too loudly. Yet, even as her life grew steadier, her heart carried a weight. At night, when the fire burned low, memories returned. They clawed at her mind, dragging her back to the days when she was not just unwanted, but betrayed, One evening, as the human fixed a broken chair inside his small home, she sat in silence across the room. Her eyes stared at the wall, but she was not truly seeing it. Her thoughts were far away. Her chest tightened, her throat burned. The words she had buried for so long pressed against her lips. Finally, she spoke, her voice breaking. "Do you know why they sold me?" The human looked up, his face calm, waiting. He did not rush her, did not press her. He simply set the chair aside and listened. She gripped her knees tightly. Her nails dug into her skin. "They said I was too big, too strong, I could not breed." Her words came sharp and bitter. A woman without children is nothing to them. A daughter who cannot bring heirs is a curse. Her body shook as she continued. "My parents, my own blood, they gave me 2 traitors. They said I would bring shame to the clan if I stayed. They told me I was worth more dead than alive." The human's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent, letting her speak. Her eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "I begged them not to send me. I begged them to let me stay. I told them I would work harder, I would fight, I would serve, but they turned their backs. They chose to see me as meat." Her breath came ragged. Her voice fell to a whisper. "I remember the day I was led to the market. My mother could not even look at me. My father told me to walk with pride. Pride, while they sold me like cattle." She buried her face in her hands, her massive shoulders trembling. Shame burned hotter than the fire in the hearth. For years she had carried this secret, the wound deeper than any blade. The human stood slowly, crossing the room. He knelt in front of her, placing his hand gently on her arm. His touch was steady, not pitying, not mocking. "They were wrong," he said firmly. His voice cut through her sobs. "They were blind." She lifted her head, her tear-streaked face full of disbelief. "How can you say that? I am nothing. I cannot give life." He shook his head, his eyes unwavering. "You already give life," he said, "not by children, but by strength, by courage, by saving others. You saved me. You saved this village. That is more life than they will ever understand." Her lips trembled, her heart pounded at his words. No one had ever said such things to her. No one had ever seen her as more than failure. She whispered, "But I was cast out, unwanted, his." Voice softened, yet carried power, unwanted by them, yes, but not by me. The firelight flickered between them. The weight of years of shame began to crack. Piece by piece, tears flowed freely down her cheeks. Not of sorrow this time, but of something new, something warm. She pressed a trembling hand against her chest, feeling her heart beat wildly. She looked at him with wide eyes. "Why do you keep saying these things?" she asked, almost afraid of the answer. The human's gaze did not waver. "Because they are true," he said. The girl lowered her head, care spalling onto her knees. But for the first time, they did not feel like chains. They felt like release. The past still haunted her, but in that moment, with his steady presence beside her, the weight no longer crushed her. Instead, she felt the faint spark of hope, fragile but alive. The village's mockery, the morning sun, rose bright and sharp. The human packed his few belongings and gestured for the girl to follow. Her steps were heavy, but she obeyed, her mind still full of questions. She did not understand why she was alive, why she was walking free beside him. By noon, they reached the edge of a small village. Houses of wood and stone lined the path. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the smell of baked bread filled the air. The girl slowed, her chest tightening. Villages had always been places of shame for her, places where eyes turned sharp and laughter cut like knives. As soon as the people saw her, whispers began. Faces turned, mouths opened in shock. Children pointed with wide eyes. Some laughed, others hid behind their mothers. One man shouted loudly, "Look at the beast." "Where did you drag that monster from, human?" The girl lowered her head, shame burning her skin. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to shrink into nothing. Her body felt heavier than ever. The human kept walking, his back straight, his face calm. He did not answer the insult. But the villagers were not silent. "Why bring her here?" Another man sneered. "She eat us all alive." Women gathered near wells, whispering with cruel smiles, "Too big, too ugly. No man of our kind would ever take her." "Why would?" A human, a child, ran forward, picked up a stone, and threw it. The rock struck the girl's shoulder. She flinched but did not raise her head. The crowd laughed, clapping the child's back. "Good throw." One shouted. The human stopped. His eyes turned sharp. He bent down, picked up the stone, and tossed it back to the ground at the boy's feet. His voice cut through the laughter like a blade. "Do that again, and you will answer to me." The laughter died quickly. Silence spread through the street. The villagers looked at each other, surprised. No one expected the human to defend her. The girl's heart pounded. She looked up at him in shock. No one had ever stood for her before. Not once, not ever. Her throat ached with unspoken words. Still, the cruelty did not stop. As they walked, women muttered, "He'll regret this." She crushed him in his sleep. Monsters cannot be tamed. The men shook their heads. Foolish human. Wasting his life, the human ignored them. Step by step, he led her through the village. At last, they reached a small house at the edge. Its roof was old, its walls rough, but it was quiet, apart from the rest. He opened the door and motioned for her to enter. Inside, the house smelled of wood and herbs. A small table stood in the corner. A bed against the wall. It was simple but warm. The girl stood frozen at the door, her chest tight, her eyes filled with disbelief. "You can stay here," the human said calmly. He placed his pack down, lit a small fire in the hearth. Then he turned to her. "No one will hurt you here." Her lips trembled. She wanted to believe him, but the words of the villagers still rang in her ears. She sat slowly in the corner, hugging her knees, whispering to herself, "They hate me. They all hate me." The human knelt in front of her, his voice steady. "Let them hate. There. Words don't decide who you are." Her breath caught. She looked at him, searching for a lie. But his face was calm, his eyes steady. He believed his own words, and somehow she felt the truth of them. Outside, the village still whispered and mocked, but inside that small house, for the first time, she felt a fragile shelter forming around her heart. The test of strength. The days passed slowly in the human's small house at the edge of the village. The girl kept mostly to herself, silent and watchful. Every time she stepped outside, she felt the eyes of the villagers burning into her skin. Some pointed, some whispered, some laughed, but she endured. She had endured worse. The human treated her differently. He gave her food, shared water, and never once raised his hand against her. Yet in her heart, doubts still lingered. She wondered if one day he would change. If one day he would be like the others. One night, as the moon climbed high, the sound of footsteps broke the silence. Shadows moved quickly between the houses. Torches glowed in the darkness. The girl tensed, her sharp hearing catching the whispers of rough voices. "Bandits," the human stood quickly, grabbing a blade from the wall. His face was calm, but his eyes narrowed with focus. "Stay here," he said firmly, but the girl's heart pounded. Something inside her screamed that she could not just sit still. The bandits reached the edge of the house. Kicking at the wooden door, "Come out, human," one shouted. "Hand over your strange beast, or we'll burn your home down." The girl froze, her stomach twisted. They wanted her. They saw her not as a person, but as a prize, as meat. Rage burned deep in her chest. The human pushed the door open and stepped outside. "Leave now," he warned, his voice steady. The bandits laughed, at least 6 of them, carrying clubs and rusted blades. "One human against all of us," one mocked. "You'll be dead before sunrise." The girl's hands shook. She could see him standing alone against them. For so long, she had been told she was worthless, too big, too useless. But now, as danger loomed, something inside her broke free. She could not watch him fall. With a roar, she burst through the doorway. Her massive form towering in the firelight. The bandits staggered back in shock. "What is that?" one cried. "She's huge." Before they could recover, she swung her arm, knocking 2 men to the ground. The force of the blow sent their weapons flying. Another charged at her. But she caught him by the collar and hurled him into the dirt. The villagers woke to the sound of chaos. They peeked from their windows. Their eyes wide, for the first time, they saw the alien girl not as prey, but as a storm. She fought like a wild force, her massive form unstoppable. One bandit tried to stab the human, but she stepped in front. The blade scratched her skin, drawing blood. Yet she did not stop. Her roar shook the air as she lifted the man and slammed him to the ground. The last 2 bandits fled into the night, their torches falling in the dirt. "Monster!" they shouted as they disappeared. The village fell silent again. Only the sound of heavy breathing and crackling fire remained. The girl stood trembling, blood on her arm, sweat on her brow, her chest heaving. She turned slowly to the human, afraid of what he would say. Would he fear her now? Would he see her as a beast? But his eyes were steady, calm. His voice carried no fear, only gratitude. "You saved me," he said quietly. Her knees weakened, her throat tightened. No one had ever thanked her for her strength. For the first time, her size, her power, the very thing that made her unwanted, had saved someone's life. The villagers whispered from the shadows, their voices no longer mocking, but uncertain, some even fearful. Yet none dared throw stones now. The girl looked at her wounded arm, then at the human's calm face. A strange warmth filled her chest, stronger than pain, stronger than fear. For the first time in her life, her strength had meaning. The walk to freedom, the morning sun rose over the quiet land. The girl opened her eyes slowly for a moment. She thought she was still in the market of shame, but the sound of birds and the warmth of a fire reminded her she was no longer chained. To that stage, she turned her head and saw the human sitting near the dying fire. He was sharpening a small blade, his movements calm, his face serious. For a brief second, her heart froze. She thought this was the moment he would finally use the knife on her, but instead, he cut a piece of fruit and placed it beside her. "Eat," he said simply. She hesitated. Her mind could not understand. No one had ever treated her like this. Still, hunger forced her hand. She picked up the fruit and tasted it. Sweet juice filled her mouth. Her stomach growled with need. When she finished, the human stood. He picked up the chain that bound her wrist. For a moment, she felt her chest tighten again, but then, with one firm strike of his blade, he broke the lock. The chain fell to the ground with a heavy sound. The girl stared in shock, her eyes wide, her heart racing. "Why? Why free me?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The human looked at her with calm eyes. "Because you should walk on your own," he said. She touched her wrist, still red from the iron. She could hardly believe it. Freedom had always been a dream too far. Now the chain was gone. She stood slowly, her massive form casting a long shadow. She looked at him, unsure if this was real. The path ahead was empty. Stretching toward the hills, the human began walking. His steps steady. He did not pull her, did not command her. He only glanced back and said, "Come if you want." Her heart pounded. Her mind screamed with doubt. She could run. She could disappear. Yet her legs moved on their own. She followed. Step after step. The feeling was strange. She was not being dragged, she was choosing to walk. As they moved away from the village roads, the air grew quieter. The wind brushed against her face. She breathed deeply, and it almost hurt. It had been so long since she felt air without the stink of chains and crowds. The human did not speak much. Only sometimes he pointed at the path, or gave her water when she slowed down. His silence was not cruel. It was steady. It made her feel less like a burden. At one point, she stumbled, her heavy body weak from years of neglect. She expected him to scold her or leave her behind. Instead, he offered his hand. His grip was strong, steady, careful, he said. Just one word. But it warmed her chest. She stared at his hand holding hers. It was smaller, rough, scarred. Yet it held her as if she was not a beast, but something precious. She pulled back quickly. Confused by the heat in her cheeks, they reached a small stream by noon. The human knelt and filled a flask. He washed his face, then gestured for her. To drink, she bent down, her reflection in the water startling her. She saw the shame in her eyes, the weight of her form, the scars of her chains. For the first time, she wondered, what does he see when he looks at me? The sound of laughter still echoed in her mind. The voices of those who called her meat, but beside this human, walking step by step. She felt a strange silence inside her heart. It was not peace yet, but it was something close. When the sun began to sink, painting the sky with gold, the human spoke again. His words simple but strong. You're free now. You walk with me. Not behind me. She stopped for a moment, her throat tight. She wanted to answer, but no words came. Instead, she only nodded and followed with each step. The chains in her memory grew lighter. With each step, the path ahead felt less like an ending, and more like the beginning of something she never thought she would have: freedom. The first night, the sun sank behind the hills, and the world slowly turned dark. The air grew colder, and the sky filled with tiny stars. The girl had never walked so far in her life. Her legs ached, her back felt heavy, yet she followed the human without a word. At last, he stopped near a small clearing. A circle of trees stood around them, silent and tall. The human placed his pack down and began to gather wood. His movements were steady, careful, as if this was a routine he had done many times before. Soon a fire crackled to life, its warm glow chasing away the shadows. The girl sat near the edge of the clearing, hugging her knees. Her eyes stayed on the flames, but her ears listened for every sound. Each snap of a branch, each rustle of the wind, made her tense. She was not used to quiet nights. Silence could mean danger, silence could mean death. The human cooked something in a small pan. The smell of food reached her nose, making her stomach growl. She pressed her lips together. Ashamed, she did not want to beg. She was still meat in her own mind. Why should she deserve food without looking at her? The human placed a piece of bread and cooked meat on a cloth and pushed it toward her. Eat, he said simply. She stared at it, her throat tightened. She whispered, why do you feed me? I am nothing. The human looked up at her, his eyes calm. You are not nothing, he replied. The words struck her harder than any chain. She lowered her gaze, her hands trembling as she picked up the food. Slowly she ate, each bite filling the emptiness inside her. Tears slid down her cheeks, but she wiped them quickly, hoping he would not see. The fire popped, sending sparks into the air. The human leaned back against a log, watching the flames. His face was unreadable. She stared at him for a long time, wondering, why had he bought her? What did he want from her? Finally, she whispered, her voice shaking, are you going to kill me tonight? The words hung heavy in the air. Her body stiffened, waiting for his answer. The human turned his head. Slowly, his gaze steady. No, he said, just one word, firm and final. She blinked in confusion. "Then why?" she asked again. Her voice broke like glass. He looked at her, the firelight dancing in his eyes. "Because you've suffered." "Enough," he said. Her chest ached at those words. She had never heard anyone speak like that. Not her family, not her people, not even herself. For years she had believed she was worthless, just a mistake of birth. But this human's voice carried no mockery, only truth. The night grew colder. A sharp wind made her shiver. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hide her trembling. The human noticed. Without a word, he took a blanket from his pack and tossed it to her. She caught it clumsily, staring at it like it was treasure. She pulled the blanket around her shoulders. Its warmth made her eyes sting with tears. She turned her face away, not wanting him to see her weakness. Yet in that moment, a small seed of trust was planted deep inside her heart. The fire burned low, casting long shadows across the clearing. The girl lay down, curling beneath the blanket, her body still tense, her mind still racing. She whispered to herself, "Maybe tomorrow he will change. Maybe tomorrow he will hurt me." But as she listened, she heard the steady sound of his breathing, calm and unbroken. It was the sound of someone who had nothing to hide. Slowly, her eyes closed. For the first time in years, she fell asleep without chains. The stars shone bright above them, and though the night was filled with silence, it no longer felt like death. It felt like the first night of something new. The market of Shamla-sun was burning over the open market. The air smelled of dust, sweat, and smoke. Voices shouted, laughed, and bargained. In the center, chained and standing tall, was the alien girl. Her body was massive, far larger than the others of her kind. She kept her head down, ashamed. She knew why she was here. She knew what they called her, too big to breed. The auctioneer shouted. His voice echoed like thunder. The crowd burst into laughter. Men pointed at her and made cruel jokes. Women sneered. Some even spat near her feet. The alien girl's heart was heavy. She was born different, her body larger, stronger. Yet her people said it was useless. She could not give life. So what was the point of keeping her? In their eyes, she was not a woman, not a daughter, not a warrior. She was meat. The auctioneer lifted his stick and tapped her shoulder. "Look at this size," he said. "Perfect for cutting. Perfect for roasting." The crowd cheered. One man raised his hand and shouted a low price. Another shouted higher, not because they wanted her alive, but because they wanted her on their table. Her hands trembled against the chains. She wanted to cry, but no tears came. Her throat was too dry, her chest too tight. She only thought one thing: please let it end quickly. A child in the crowd threw a stone. It hit her leg. The people laughed harder. The girl flinched but did not fight back. She had no right, no voice. Not anymore. The bidding climbed slowly, but it was still lower than what a normal girl of her kind would cost. Why would anyone pay for something broken? They called her waste. They called her failed. The auctioneer grew impatient. She is large, she is strong, and she will feed a whole family. Don't let this chance go. The girl closed her eyes. She remembered when she was young, her mother had once told her she was special. Her father had once said she was strong, but all those words were gone now, replaced by the whispers of shame. She wished she had died before this day. The price dropped lower. The auctioneer begged for offers. "Do not let this meat go for nothing," he shouted, but the crowd began to lose interest. They wanted someone smaller, someone pretty, someone who could carry children. Not her, never her. The girl felt her legs weaken. The heat of the sun pressed down, sweat rolled down her face. She thought she would collapse, perhaps if she fainted. They would kill her quickly. Perhaps that would be mercy then. Through the noise, another voice rose, a strange voice. It was deep, calm, different. "I will buy her," the voice said. The crowd went silent for a moment, then laughter exploded louder than ever before. People turned to see who had spoken. A man stepped forward. A human. Whispers ran through the crowd. A human. What would he want with her? He must be mad. The auctioneer blinked in shock, but then quickly smiled. "The human knows value," he said. "Sold to the man with strange taste." The girl lifted her head slightly. Her eyes met the human's for a second. He did not laugh. He did not sneer. He only looked at her with calm eyes. She felt a strange fear, but also a strange hope. Why would a human claim her? What did he want? Was this another kind of cruelty? The chains were unlocked. The auctioneer pushed her toward him. "She's yours now," he said with a grin. The crowd roared in laughter, but the girl's heart beat fast. For the first time, her fate had shifted. She did not know if it was for good or for worse. But one thing was certain, her life had just changed forever. The human's unexpected. The crowd still roared with laughter as the human stepped forward. He looked calm, his eyes steady, while everyone around him pointed and mocked. Some slapped their knees, shouting, "A human wants the beast." Others jeered, "He must be drunk." The girl lowered her head again. Her heart raced. Was this human different? Or was he just another cruel man playing a joke? She dared not hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope was painful. The auctioneer shoved the chain into the human's hands. "She's all yours," he said with a grin. "Don't let her crush you while you sleep." The crowd howled again. The human said nothing. He only held the chain. His grip was firm, but not rough. His face had no smile, no malice, only silence. Slowly, he pulled her away from the stage. The crowd followed. Eager to see what he would do, the girl stumbled as she walked, her legs weak, her body heavy from hunger and shame. The human stopped, reached into his pack, and pulled out a flask of water. He held it out to her. She froze. Staring at it, "Drink," he said simply. His voice was steady, calm. Not mocking, she hesitated, wondering if it was a trick. But her throat burned. Her lips were cracked. Slowly she lifted the flask. The cool water touched her tongue, and she nearly cried. The crowd booed. "Don't waste water on that thing." One man shouted, another spat, "Cut her apart and be done with it." The human ignored them. He guided her through the street. Step by step, everywhere they went. Eyes followed. Shopkeepers shook their heads. Children whispered, "She's too big." Women covered their mouths and laughed. Still, the human walked, his back straight. His hands steady on the chain, the girl whispered, her voice shaking. Why buy me?" The human glanced at her. For a moment she thought he would not answer. Then he said softly, "Because no one else would." Her chest tightened. She did not understand. Did he pity her? Did he need her strength? Or was this just another way to humiliate her? She could not read his expression. As the sun began to set, they left the market behind. The noise of the crowd faded. Only the sound of their footsteps and the rustle of trees remained. The human finally stopped near a broken wall. He placed his pack down and made a small fire. She sat apart from him, hugging her knees. The chain still heavy on her wrist, she waited for him to speak, waited for the knife, waited for the cruelty. But he only cooked something in a pan and then handed her a piece of bread. Her eyes widened. She shook her head. "I am meat." "Why feed meat?" she whispered, her voice cracked. The human looked at her directly. His words were slow, clear. "You are not meat?" Her breath caught. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. No one had ever said those words to her. Not her parents, not her people, not the traders. No one. She held the bread in trembling hands. She took a bite. The taste was simple, but it filled her stomach like a miracle. Her eyes burned, tears finally falling down her cheeks. The human did not laugh at her tears. He only sat by the fire, staring into the flames. His silence was heavy, but not cruel. It was a silence that made her feel safe. In the distance, the market crowd sang and drank. They had already forgotten her. But here, beside a stranger, she felt seen for the first time. As night deepened, the fire flickered low. She looked at the human, his face calm, his eyes half closed. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "Why do you not fear me?" His voice came quiet but firm. "Because I see you." Her heart pounded at those words. She did not know what they meant yet, but for the first time in her life, she felt that maybe, just maybe, she was more than what they said she was. Asterisk.